Detailer's Roadmap Cruise Control, where we navigate the roadways of life, business, and everything in between. Hey guys, it's Kevin Davis from the Detailer's Roadmap Cruise Control podcast. Today we're talking to a good friend of mine, Ben Runkel from, I'm going to read your business name, High Def Detailing, Ceramic Coating, and Paint Protection Film. And I'm sure there's some other services in there that you just couldn't fit in the description. But hey, thanks for coming along. And so I think the first step is probably just for that's your the basic title and where you're from. But give us a little bit of background on what you do now, and then kind of I'd like to hear more of like the story of how you got here and kind of that journey as well.
Yeah, for sure. So first off, thanks for having me. Thrilled to be here and talk about detailing and life and everything that goes with that. So currently I am in a shop as a business owner with a part-time employee, but pretty much owner operator. If I had to sum it up, I'd still categorize myself as that. But I've been detailing and owning this business since 2014.
Cool.
And, I actually started off, I should mention too, I'm in northern Indiana, is where I'm at. So Elkhart, Indiana, and it's basically at the Michigan border. So
every your whole business should be based on RVs, right? That's where like 85% of the RVs are made in this country.
Yeah, it's
Elkhart, Indiana.
Yes, the RV capital of the world.
Yep, there you go.
Yeah, basically, that's our workforce in this area. It is RV plants. So we live and die by it. So
nice.
Kind of a quick tangent. When COVID happened, everyone wanted RVs, and like our area boomed. And I'll get into that because that helped my business.
Oh yeah, we want to hear about that for sure.
Yeah, but I guess I can take it back to 2014 when I kind of picked this up as a side hustle, which I know a lot of detailers kind of pick this up as a side hustle, and then eventually they make the transition to full time, and that's my story to a T. So I was a full-time music educator, a band director in a public school. So I taught music grades 6 through 12, and started detailing in the summers because I loved cars. I bought a new car for myself and really wanted to take care of it, and just kind of picked up some detailing techniques, starting with my own vehicle, and then was like, hey, I could kind of do this for other people as a little side hustle, make some extra cash in the summer. From there, it kind of evolved into, all right, this is actually a service people I know are in need of.
Mm-hmm.
And it got to the point where I'm like, I'm booking on weekends now when I'm teaching. And as a music teacher, you really don't have many weekends to begin with.
Yeah.
Always traveling and doing all this extra stuff. So, the few weekends I did have, I'd be detailing as well. And I did that side hustle approach for about 5 years or so, 4 to 5 years. And kind of in the back of my mind knowing, this is growing. If I wanted to go all in at any point, I'm feeling the confidence that I could build this up. And so I kind of had that reassurance in the back of my mind. And at the same time was kind of feeling a little burnt from the grind of teaching and, working 80-hour weeks. I loved my time as a teacher, loved working with kids, still have a huge passion for music and working with kids and all that. So, but yeah, I kind of just got to a grind and, was at that pivoting point that a lot of us business owners get at, where it's like, all right, do I leave my comfortable paycheck and go all in with the self-employment thing? And I did that in 2019 and planned to do a lot of music stuff at the same time and kind of make the transition a little smoother that way.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had all this music stuff lined up, and then COVID hit shortly thereafter and canceled all my music stuff.
Oh, wow. Yeah, right. Because it's a little hard to play when no one's able to go to the theater, right? Or go to the whatever event center.
Yep. Yeah. So I had like these freelance gigs lined up. and I was going to be doing that and then detailing a little bit more full time. All my freelance stuff got canceled. I was like, all right, I'm going all in on detailing. Like, here we go. And it was ironically a great time. I mean, people, were home and kind of had stuff they've had on the back burner, like getting their car taken care of, getting that done now, or they wanted the interior cleaned up. I mean, that was a big thing for a lot of us then.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that kind of jump started it. And, I was working at home too. We renovated our house garage to be more of a little boutique type shop, I guess you could say.
Right.
So we renovated that knowing I was going to go in full time with this. So I was working from home, and yeah, things just steadily went up. And I've now been in a shop now for about 1.5 years. And yeah, I mean, it's just every year is just better and better, and couldn't be more thrilled and thankful for how things have progressed. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, COVID was an interesting thing for those of us, as somebody that sells products in the automotive space, not only in detailing, but in off-road and consumer and all that kind of stuff. Man, I would gladly have that sales environment again for like the rest of time, because we call it the COVID economy, in product sales, because it was so overinflated. Like, we're literally doing twice a month in revenue than what we're doing right now. And it was friggin' easy. This was always also pre iOS 14 when they screwed everything up for anybody that does online marketing. But yeah, so that's awesome that you what a blessing to be able to have something in play that really benefited from something that did not benefit everybody. Right. To be able to go into that and have that, and already have have everything set up and be ready to do that, because it's not like, oh, well, I'm just going to go grab a bunch of detailing supplies and
right.
try to open my own business right in the middle of all this. You already had that baseline done.
Yeah. And it was very providential. I mean, it was completely in God's timing, because I'd been talking about exiting out of teaching at a certain point. My wife and I were discussing that for a couple years. So it wasn't just like a sudden thing.
Yeah.
And it just felt like the timing was right. The end of that school year in 2019. And yeah, I mean, it's just, we look back on that and it's like, that wasn't luck. I mean, that was God's timing.
Yeah. It's fun to look back and see those pathways and see how your steps kind of align with him, and all of those kind of things, which is awesome. So, and your situation was different, because as a music teacher, you're not like the quote unquote normal teachers. And I know teachers are taking papers home to grade, and so it's not just a 7:30 to 3:30 job for any teacher necessarily, but I would guess that your particular schedule was less conducive to a side hustle than, a first grade teacher, for example.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And like when I say, I started detailing in the summers, my summers as a music teacher was basically about 5.5 to 6 weeks, because you have most of June off, and then a week and a half in July, and then you're right back in it, getting marching band stuff going. And the program I taught at was a very involved program. We won a number of state championships with our marching band. So it was pretty intense, but I wouldn't have it any other way. Like, that's just how, if I'm going to do something, I want to work with a great program, or if I'm going to run a business, I want to go all in now. So,
yeah. And have you always kind of had that entrepreneurial small business owner kind of side to you? I'm interested, because that's not a usual path to go from an educator necessarily, although being in front of people and being up on stage and being a musician and that stuff does play into a lot of what I've seen on social media and the way you present yourself and everything. But from a business standpoint, that's not kind of your usual path, right? Go from a band teacher into a full-time running a very successful detail shop.
Yeah. And I kind of went in just not knowing anything really, just really having to figure out this this self-employed path. And every step of the way was just a learning experience. Thankfully, come to find out, every step was like something new and exciting that I was like, wow, this is so much better being self-employed. Like, man, hey, I have tax benefits now, and I can set my own schedule. And the biggest thing really for me was, if I wanted to grow the business, or if I wanted to really go after making more money, I could, because it was kind of a direct proportion of the time and effort that I put in. I was getting good returns on that. And in teaching, it's you get your returns in different ways than monetary ways for the most part. You get a lot of gratitude and fulfillment, and pride in your work, and seeing kids grow up and make good decisions and be successful. But you could put in 80 hours that week and you're still only getting paid for 40.
Yeah. And then you get your 3.5%, cost of living increase, if that, every year or whatever, however they lay that out, right?
Yeah. And so like I have a special place in my heart for teachers, and being one, and I did that for 10 years. So like if I have teachers that come to my business, I'm like, hey, you get 10% off. I do teachers, first responders, retired veterans, military, all that. So
those are, teachers are very underrated in our society, and honestly, everybody you just mentioned is underrated. My daughter's a paramedic in Atlanta. So, and I keep telling her, I'm like, you do know, like here, our economy is weird. So I'm like, you do know when you were an EMT and just a new paramedic, you got paid less than the guys at Taco Bell are getting paid here. And she doesn't like to hear that. But that, it's just dumb. It's like she literally saves people's lives all day long, making, 20 something dollars an hour. But so we talked to Kurt Fillmore, last a couple of days ago, and, he's a big shop. Like he's got, 6 employees, and he's doing, X number of dollars every year. And he's just like a big operation. I would consider you kind of the, smaller owner operator plus, right? Like that. Yeah. You're not just a single mobile guy. So you're kind of in that, second stage kind of a thing. Now, you have a new little one who's, that's your first, right?
Yes, that's our first. Yeah.
So looking at the advantages of I've been self-employed for like 25 years. So my kids didn't know a time that I left the house really to go, and I've always officed out of the house, which is just by the nature of what I do, except for when I was running the detail shop. So for you, how are you in your mind kind of laying out the next 5 years, 10 years, whatever, in terms of like this whole work-life balance and being available for your family and taking these vacations? I see, Facebook stalked you a little bit today, and your destinations of choice are the same as mine whenever we go traveling. Yep. So, having that availability, like, are you planning for that? Because I think, and this is a long way to ask this question, but I think so many people are so monetarily focused in their growth versus how do I build a business that supports the life I want to have, right? And I feel like that's something, I'm guessing that's something you're planning for, but can you talk on that a little bit?
Yeah, that's such a great topic, because that's like, I could probably talk for an hour just on that.
We can talk as long on that as you want to.
Yeah. So like my wife and I were, she works full time right now too. And as a mom, our son Palmer, he actually just turned 6 months today.
Oh, nice. And your birthday was a couple of days ago, by the way. So happy birthday. Yes. At the time we're recording, this won't launch for another 6 weeks, but happy birthday.
Yeah. Thank you.
So.
Yeah. And she is the vacation junkie between the two of us. I was always like, just work. Like, I'll take a vacation once every 6 years and I'll be fine.
Yeah.
And when we started dating, I quickly realized she's like, I need a vacation every 6 months.
Yeah, she and I would get along quite well for sure.
Yeah, well, and she converted me. Once I realized, wow, this is very beneficial to take time away, just hit pause and try and slow my brain down, which it takes a lot to do that.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I sleep a lot less than my wife, so I usually have 3 or 4 hours in the morning to be able to set out on the beach and do whatever I need to do and get thinking. But yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so so when we were dating and in our first 4.5 years of marriage before we had kids, we would take trips every 6 months. And we're actually in a stretch right now where we haven't taken a trip in a year and a half.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Because of being pregnant and now having Palmer here. And it's like, that's a topic in our house every day. It's like, how are we going to get this?
I got to get out of here.
How are we going to make this happen? Like, I'm like, well, flights are cheap. If we can leave, we can leave the kid with your mom and dad. Then we're at the conflict of, we're not really ready to leave him, overnight. It's like, all right, do we take him? Do we put him in a car and drive 20 hours down to Florida? So we're working through that. But it's become something that has been a big part of our marriage is trying to get away. And yeah, like you said, we have to share the same spots. We love the Gulf Coast of Florida. So the Sarasota, Lido Key, Siesta Key, that area, one of those beaches. But that was one of the things too, switching into being a business owner is I have the flexibility now that we can take those trips whenever we want, really. And so, yeah, we do kind of plan for that. And, every, summer's usually a slamming time for detailing businesses.
Right.
But I mean, I take a full week off in June or July. I take 2 weeks off at Christmas, just take random days when it's like, hey, let's do a 3-day weekend or something.
Yeah.
As long as my schedule's not booked out, I'll just plan for it and you can take that time. And yeah, I mean, that's more important right now than, topping the previous month's sales numbers. And
right.
Even we're just talking about that, looking at this upcoming month, like my sales numbers in May they're good. They're average what they normally are. And I'm knowing like, oh man, they could be better, but I'm taking a lot of time off. In fact, I take every Monday off now just to spend time with our son.
Nice.
Because I'm able to do that. I'm not going to get that time back.
Right.
And I'm basically working 4-day weeks now. I'll do an occasional Saturday to try and get caught up, but I'm really trying to make it work just doing 4 days and not kill myself because, I just want to be able to have a day where I can be with him. And
well, frankly, I'm surprised that your business hasn't completely folded just by taking that day off. I was talking to Kurt last week about, the old where you've got these guys that are, showing pictures of the watch at 2:00 in the morning. That was a trend there for a while, and getting my hustle on and all that whole hustle culture. But I think that's so. Do you actually just like, obviously you've got a part-time employee, but like when you take a week or 2 weeks off, are you pretty much closing the shop then?
Yeah, at this point, and my help that I have now, it's he's helped me out a little bit through the winter time. So it's actually a friend of mine who I've kind of mentored and coached him. Kind of started his own detailing business, and he reached out to me during his slow season. Was like, if you need extra help at the shop, be willing to do that. We kind of worked it out where it was great situation for both of us, and so he helped me out a lot through that. But now his business is starting to pick up a little bit more, and so he's focusing more on that, and that's totally fine. So I don't have as much help now going into the summer, but I've seen the benefits of having an employee.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm kind of at that point in my business now where I might even just go ahead and hire someone full time to kind of keep things expanding and scaling.
Yeah, because it sounds like for the most part you've got enough business to be able to do it, and then it's this weird cycle where you're like, can I afford to hire somebody? First of all, like, do I have the income now to hire somebody, or how long will it take me to build the business based on the fact that I have an extra person to do it? Like, it's this weird, like, at some point it's almost like a, jump off the cliff kind of a thing, but, doing the numbers and understanding how that person will impact it makes a big difference.
Yeah. And my situation is kind of unique in that, like, I'm right at that point in the business where it can be go time to scale it huge. And I could stay up super late every night. I could go in every Saturday. I could do all this stuff and just crank this thing out. But like, I'm 37 and I have a wife and a son, and I'm just at a different stage in life. Like, if I was at this stage of my business, but in my early 20s, I mean, I'd be approaching things probably a bit differently. But yeah, I'm trying to find that balance of, all right, I'm wanting to scale the business, and I do have kind of a 5-year plan where I want to see it. But I'm not going to sacrifice, family time on weekends and watching my son grow up. So.
Yes. I mean, it's really that whole, and I went through a time when I was younger where I worked in the corporate world, missed really the first 6 months of my daughter's life because I was kind of a workaholic and traveled 6 days a week and all this stuff. And then I really just stopped that way of thinking. And it's a crazy story I can tell you offline, but doing that literally changed everything about my life, and making those decisions to prioritize. And everybody's different, right? Like everybody, the way they approach things are different, but I would encourage people to look at your example also to see, how this can look without that pressure of having to build a $10 million detailing business or any kind of business. But to have that balance and to do it deliberately, right? Your mid-30s. And if you're 21 years old, and this is what we talked last week about this with Kurt also. He was like, do what works well for you. If you're, like you said, if you're 22, single, have no relationships, you don't have a dog or a cat or whatever, go ahead and, work 18 hours a day if that's what you want to do to if that's what brings you fulfillment. But if you have a family, if you're trying to actually build a life, then don't allow the business itself to become that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm curious so you said you were so what happened with COVID, the RV industry, and how that helped grow your business?
Yeah. So, like I said earlier, canceled all my music gigs. So it kind of forced me into just, all right, detailing is it. Let's focus on that. And so I started getting a lot of requests about interior cleanings, and treaded cautiously with that at the very beginning, but none of us had any idea what was going
on. Right.
I was like, do I need a hazmat suit to clean the interior of this car or not?
Right.
But yeah, that it kind of put me in that box where I had to focus on the business, and I picked up my first what do we call it, like commercial account. Mm-hmm. Yeah, my first non-retail customer. It was a transport company in our community that would transport elderly people from nursing homes to appointments and whatnot. And they had this fleet of minivans, handicap vans that they reached out to me saying, hey, we want, we got this COVID grant from the state or federal or whatever. We want to use it to keep our vans sanitized and cleaned. So I worked up some quotes for them in my mind, thinking like, oh, yay, 20 minivans
right.
clean up. But, at the time I was like, well, I'm all in, so let's roll with this. And it was kind of exciting in a weird way too, because I was like, hey, it's my first non-retail customer, makes me feel more like a legit business. And I was just kind of making that pivot anyways. So I took on that account, and it actually turned out to be pretty profitable. I knew I'd be seeing these vans often. So the first time I saw them, I went nuts and did a complete overhaul of the interior. Definitely was not, getting the right hourly rate on the first job. But I knew just doing that hard work up front would pay off. And then I would see these vans back every couple of weeks for quick cleanups. And that kind of kept me going through that transition, where I at least had that steady account. And then from there, just more and more people were reaching out for interior cleanings, and was able to start growing the business.
Yeah, because I'm guessing that if you've got some that are in, if the RV economy is one that drives the obviously drives that economy, for sure, then you've got people that are, flush with cash, both from the quote unquote free money that everybody got. And we'll stay off of that topic, but that, they had flush with cash, they're probably getting tons of overtime.
Yep.
And they want to bring them in and have their car done, right?
Yeah, that was the other thing too. Like, just the money was flowing in our area during that time because the RV business was booming, just record sales. And so, everyone had a lot of extra money floating around. And so they're spending it on more luxury items.
Mm-hmm.
So my ceramic coating sales went through the roof around that time. And it was just, it was easy to sell people on stuff because they didn't really overthink it.
Right.
When you threw a number at them that was over $1,000, that's fine. A lot of people would pay in cash. So it's just kind of a unique thing.
That's a crazy time now, which then actually you seem like you've done a good job of parlaying that into building an actual business. Are those customers, because I saw on your thing, you're one of the smart ones that actually does maintenance washers.
Yes.
Which, I mean, and so like you've parlayed that really into, really capitalizing on the long-term customer value, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, if there's ever slow seasons, like my first go-to in my marketing is, hey, reach out to my current customer base. There's already several hundred or 1,000 people that already have been sold to, and it's an easier sale. Or it's like, hey, did you remember to bring your vehicle back for its annual maintenance? If you forgot, let's get it booked. And that's been huge. Just like constantly keeping in touch with your client base is so important, rather than just doing the one and done. All right, yep, got your vehicle coded, see ya.
Yeah, which I think is like it's still the trend in the industry. I think so many people, and we're leaving millions of dollars as an industry on the table by not doing that, because with your existing customer, there's no customer acquisition cost other than whatever time it takes you to send an email or set up an automation. And because you're a G-Technic guy, right? That's probably how we met, because I was a G-Technic. But I noticed, like, this is a question I always like to ask, because some detailers, and I actually did a video back in probably 2014 for Detailers Helper where I said, please stop co-branding your business.
Yeah.
And so you seem to be one that talks about ceramic coating versus, and even in this conversation, knowing that we know, is that something that you're fairly deliberate on, that you don't? I mean, obviously there's some advantages of G-Technic and CSU and, all of those things, just like there is with any company, but.
Yeah. I mean, I do a mixture of both, but I'm very conscious about making sure that my brand is the forefront in any sort of marketing, and even to the point where I switched my coating package names just to level 1, level 2, level 3, took the actual bottle name out of the equation. Now I'll use the images,
right,
just because it's nice and clean looking. But as far as when I'm talking to people, I'll just explain the value versus the name and the label on the bottle. But I do like the aspect of, having a company that's pretty all inclusive that you can use to support your services.
Right.
And like the fact that there's maintenance products for the coatings that have a lot of content out, and I made my own content about it too. It's the structure's there, so why not use it if it's going to help your business? But as long as you're, branding yourself how you want to be branded, I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, I was noticing looking at some of your stuff today that tends to be something that you do well. It's a great balance, and I think all shops should have this balance that is offering, whether it's, a coating company, a film company, a wrap company, whatever it happens to be, utilizing those resources that they give you, especially look for one that actually does give you content, has that, because that's friggin' expensive and takes forever to do. So has content and has resale stuff and all that, but really making your brand the prominent and making whatever companies you're working with a part of the equation, because that helps with search engine optimization and all that, but not necessarily the main thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, like speaking to G-Technic, like they even have a new marketing system that will work with your social media and actually make some posts for you, using their images and content that they have. And they're really high quality images, and everything looks great, and it's one less thing for me to worry about. But I'm only treating that as like a small piece of the pie.
Right.
One thing that helps, like, actually I didn't get to posting the last 2 days, and then this automated one already happened. So great. Like that helps out.
Yeah. All that content's great. We'll just thank Jordan for that. Jordan Mincy, who does most of the content for G-Technic, and I mean, IGL and CP and, Ceramic Pro and SB3, they all have similar, good content. They make good products, they're good people and good teams. So I don't want to say that G-Technic's the best. You could say that. I can't say that.
Right.
But so I'm interested in how you got here in terms of, like you said, you kind of started out not really knowing anything necessarily about this. So like, did you start with the basic mechanics of how you polish a car and how you clean a car and the proper way to do all that stuff? And how did you get that information? And then how'd you go about learning the business side of things? Because that's with any artist, any service-based business, the business is the hardest part and the least understood part of it, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so transitioning out of the music side, I've always had a craftsman approach to things. I, as a percussionist, would be spending tons of hours practicing, and that was kind of my drive, to be in a practice room for several hours late into the night, just trying to make something perfect, make a section of music perfect. And I found that really transitioned into detailing seamlessly, because it was that same part of my brain that was getting fueled when I'm working on a car, trying to make the paint look as good as possible. It's just like you're in a practice room working on an excerpt of music, just in a garage working on a panel on a car instead. So the transition to the technical side of it was pretty natural. And I admittedly went to YouTube University to learn a lot of the basics.
Which is fine. That's okay. Yeah.
Yep. And, I practiced on my own car, picked up, the classic Griot's 6-inch polisher and a couple foam pads, and just, got to polishing, call up some friends and said, hey, can I come over and spend a Saturday just working on your car? Basically give you a free detail, and if you let me use your garage space, and maybe if you can take some pictures of me working on it, happy to do that little bargain. And yeah, it was basically a lot of YouTube, Facebook groups, and starting to network and asking lots of questions. Fell into a lot of whatever was being marketed heavy at that time in the detailing world. And this is, like I said, around 2014, seemed like there was a lot of chemical guys marketing and a lot of stuff like that out there that was just like plastered in front of your face.
Yeah, they're not running as much now, but man, they were everywhere back at during that time for sure.
Yes. Yeah, it was like that and AutoGeek, and like the AutoGeek forum was a pretty heavy thing in the early 2000.
Which is still a really good source of information. Some of the Mike Phillips articles that are out there still on their forum and are pretty crazy. Still good.
Yeah. So I contributed a little bit to that forum at the time. And yeah, it's just, like I said, it was just practice then. I would charge way too little for way too much time. But that's how I got started. The technical aspect of it came pretty naturally. And I kind of rolled with that as the driving force of the business for a while, and was slowly figuring out the administrative side of running a business by, getting familiar with QuickBooks. So I thought. Now it makes a lot more sense. But, got the business LLC register, got the actual business account, the checking account, business credit card, all that stuff. It wasn't until around that 2019 time when I was going to go full time with the business that I made everything official and really started switching gears from detailer to business owner and really learning the back end side of things.
Yeah.
And I really enjoy all that stuff. Actually, I like the, I love seeing the numbers. I love creating content and marketing. I love seeing how that plays out and tracking things, analytics. I love that side of the business. Actually.
Well, I mean, it makes perfect sense. Music is math, right?
Yep.
And music is just really creative math, basically. If you look at, notes and how everything puts together, circle of fifths and all that crazy stuff. So the fact that first of all, let me just say that as a guitarist, I don't trust drummers, because anybody that can move all four appendages independently, there's something weird about their brain. So I'll just say that right off the bat. But that, the math and data and all that seems like, from me, what I know about music and musicians, that seems like that would make perfect sense. Did you have anybody that was a mentor, or did you go back to YouTube and kind of, self-taught kind of a thing?
Yeah. So for the longest time, it was self-taught. And then I stumbled across the auto detailing podcast on a trip down.
Mr. Jimbo.
Yes. On a trip down to Florida, actually. And so I started binging the entire podcast. And so I got like 20 episodes of Kevin Davis in a row.
I have been on that thing. I think we haven't done it in a while. I'm going to have him on this one. But I think there was like at least 8 or 9 that we did, because it was just so fun. We had such a great time doing it.
Yeah. So I started binging like that whole podcast. I think by the time I found out about it, there was 150, 200 episodes. I went straight to number 1 and just
wow. Yeah.
Thing. Now it's hard to find time to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But that was a big inspiration. Couple YouTube channels were big inspirations. And then I did hire a coach and hire a mentor a few years ago. And that was Mark Barger from, at the time, Detail Mentor was kind of the business name for that. And I'd followed him for a while beforehand and reached out to him, and he was fantastic. We actually had a coaching deal going on for about 2 years.
Wow.
And that was probably the biggest thing that helped, just to have that accountability every couple of weeks. And to really kind of help get an outside perspective from someone who's been in the business realm of detailing for a long time was really helpful. So through that connection, and then the group that him and some other detailers have kind of formed now, pretty involved with that as far as networking. And it's just a great, encouraging group of people that are business focused first, and detailing second, really.
Yeah, Mark was one of my early adopters for Detailers Helper, and he's just a really good guy. If you need business mentoring, coaching, advice, he's got a ton of content. I would highly recommend his stuff. Ivan LaCroix is another one that does a lot of that. But there are tons of resources out there. And I don't know if you would agree with this. I'm sure you would, but my advice would be to almost do it simultaneously, or the opposite of what most people would do, which is learn how to run a business first and then learn the technical aspects of it. This is especially with modern tools, Rupa's Bigfoot and modern polishes and systems and all that. There is some artistry to this job as you get into, kind of the upper echelon of things, but it's at the end of the day, it's really pretty straightforward. I won't say easy, but it's pretty straightforward to get the results you're looking for. At least let me just say instead, get the results your customers expect for the budget that they've got.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And that was a huge, another huge shift in my business focus was kind of stepping back from my own expectations of how I would want something and just really approaching how I work to the customer's expectations that we agree on beforehand.
Right.
But it's really hard to teach someone that in just a couple of years of running the business. You really need, at least I personally needed a lot of time to kind of gauge, okay, do I really need to be spending 10 hours on this paint correction when they pick up the car and it's going to run through a car wash the next week? Or even if they're washing it properly by hand, it's still going to get marred up.
Yeah.
Eventually.
Yeah. And most likely they couldn't tell the difference anyway, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's been times when, I did a long correction on a GM black vehicle, and those are just...
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Such a joy to polish it.
Soft GM black paint. That's like the bane of every polisher's existence.
I honestly somehow avoided it for like the first 3 or 4 years of my business. Like, I never had someone with a GM black vehicle that needed that wanted paint correction on it. So eventually, and I remember talking to Mark about that when he was my coach. I'm like, today's the day. Got a black Camaro coming in.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I've polished those, and to my eyes, under the lights, there's still, a little bit of something. Pull it out in the sun, looks fantastic. Customer picks it up, they're thrilled.
Yep.
And yeah, that was a big game changer.
There's a very rare, in my mind, there are very few circumstances in which much more than 80%, and obviously that's a moving target number anyway, but as most of us define correction levels, very few times that a customer is willing to pay for, and again, that's the secret, right? Willing to pay for more than 75 or 80% correction. Like, they can't tell the difference. And even with a good ceramic coating, it's going to get marred up within the first month of them, having it, unless they're, extremely anal. And if they're that way, then they should be the ones that are paying for better correction. But it's, I think that the big, and this is good that you come in the industry without really being a quote unquote detailer. Right? Like, because detailers they continue to think like detailers, and they have a hard time making that transition out of what I call is, think like your customer, your ideal customer, so that you understand what they really want and then only deliver that. If you go into McDonald's and you say, I want, the off the value menu or whatever, and you want to spend $3, they're not going to just go to the back and make you a custom hamburger and French fries and onion rings and hand it out to you, because you didn't pay for it, and nor did you have that expectation. So they don't make anything extra. So the detailing tends to be the same way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, so I'm interested in kind of the personal side of things in terms of your. So do you play pretty? Are you like most band directors where you can pretty much play anything?
Well, percussion in itself is a whole family of
Yeah.
100 instruments.
Yep.
So I've got my variety there. I do play a little bit of piano because the mallet percussion side of things is the same as.
Right. Xylophone and all that. Right. Yeah.
Yep. Um, and when I was getting my music degree in college, we had to learn all the woodwinds, all the brass instruments, all the strings. So you take a semester on woodwinds, a semester on brass, and so I learned enough to carry a tune of those instruments. But my teaching position I had was very unique in that I was a full-time percussion director.
Interesting.
So a lot of these programs in Indiana and Texas are kind of the two states that have big music programs with big staffs, multiple directors that kind of focus on their niche.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard of that. That's very interesting and pretty cool that's available.
Yeah, so our music department had a brass instructor, a woodwind instructor, an overall head director, me as the percussion specialist, an extra brass instructor because there's a lot of brass instruments. I worked with, it was pretty much like a music department at a university in a public school. So it's pretty unique in that way.
That's awesome. I think, that is very unique. And again, like I said, I there's two rules in life if you deal with musicians. A, don't trust drummers because they can move all their arms and legs independently. And B, don't ever let a guitarist stay in your house, especially ones that don't wear shoes. So, and I it's funny because I used to tell.
Speaking from experience.
It is. Well, I've never let them, but here's the funny thing. We had a guitarist in the band at church, and he was a cool guy, very hippie like, but like walked around on stage without shoes. And I made this comment to a buddy of mine, and then like a month later, he let this guy stay at his house, and it took him like 2 months to get rid of it. I'm like, I tried to tell you, this is a good rule for life. Don't let people that don't wear shoes stay at your house. There's just, they have a certain way of looking at life that doesn't include personal space, understanding personal space. So we were talking earlier about doing the follow-up and maintenance washes and customer value and all that. Are you using tools to do that? Are you doing that manually? How, I'm assuming I know the answer to that, but I don't, but.
Yeah. So I'm using Urable for a lot of my customer follow-up automated messages that go out. So they book that ceramic coating appointment with me. They'll get an automated text that I already have preloaded. I think I send it out 9 months afterwards. And I send out a few other ones before that.
Right.
I'll send like the 9 month, like, hey, we're coming up on wanting to get your vehicle in for its annual maintenance. Let's get it on the schedule. I tend to do a lot of email blasts to my customer base, and I get a pretty good rate of openness on those. Like when, once again, I love all the numbers, so I'll go in my analytics and see how many people are actually opening the emails. And people are seeing them, and I'll usually get, every time I send out an email blast, I'll get a couple responses. And it's funny because it's usually never related to whatever it is I send out. If I send out something like, hey, a ceramic coating special, 2 available, I'll get an email back. It's like, oh, hey, man, saw your email. Yeah, it reminded me. I just wanted to get my Camry in for an interior detail.
That's awesome. That's great. Yeah, I mean,
It's just constantly trying to be in front of them so they don't forget about you, but not be annoying.
And are you sending those through, what are you using for your email backend?
MailerLite.
Oh, MailerLite. Okay, yeah, I'm familiar with that. And there's Constant Contact. I use Drip for my stuff, ClickFunnels. There's HubSpot. There's literally, 15 that do all that stuff. But I highly recommend. And if that's not your thing, like if you're not a writer, if you're not really someone that does well communicating via email, There are, I mean, dude, Chat GPT now is great for at least getting, because you can say, write me a customer follow-up email about ceramic coating, and it will write it. And then you can go back and edit it and add your voice to it. It will give you email titles and video titles and all this stuff. I mean, first of all, it's scary, but we're just a couple of years away from the Terminator movies at this point. But having that tool, and then you do need to, with Urable, you create the follow-up email content and the text content and all that yourself, right?
Yep.
I talked to Chris a couple of days ago and talking through kind of some of what they do. A tool like that, whether it's Urable or another tool, you really shouldn't be running a business without some sort of system in place. I mean, even if it is a freaking Excel spreadsheet that you put follow-up information on, which would be a really difficult way to do it. But even if that's it, you need to be doing these follow-ups. And like with Gtechnic, I know, and I think almost all of them are like this, they require that maintenance wash and maintenance inspection once a year, correct? So you can use that as your leverage or your excuse to get them. But there's all the different holidays and specials and that kind of thing. You can run all that.
Yeah, and there's customers I have that they were my first customers when I started. So guess what? It's like 9 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Like I just had some of those customers in a couple of weeks ago, like still doing maintenance work on their vehicles, and it's just constantly trying to build that relationship. And since I started out doing it on the side, it was a lot of friends and family or an extension of my coworkers from the teaching world. So a lot of my students' parents, just a lot of acquaintances from that time in my life. So they kind of knew me as Mr. Runkel, the percussion director, who's now doing this side thing. They wanted to support me through that. And now we've built a long-term relationship, and they're some of my best customers that reach out all the time to get work done.
As they trade up or trade cars or all that, right?
Yep. They call me right away. Hey, we're picking up a new vehicle. Let's get it in for all the coatings. And
so what would you guess? So let's just use a 10-year mark, right? So what would you guess a customer like that you've done follow-up with regularly, they've probably traded over a 10-year period, on average 3 cars during that time, maybe we'll say every 3 years, which may be generous. It's longer now. So 2 to 3 cars. You're a numbers guy. What would you guess that each one of those customers is worth? Not including like if they have if there's a mom and dad, and then they have children and grandchildren and all of that.
Oh yeah, and you can honestly go into Urable and load up a customer, and it keeps track of how much they've spent with you. So you could I could load up a customer and see, over 5 years they've spent this much. So you could really get those hard numbers. But yeah, I mean, just on average, I mean, it's easily $5 to $10,000, just based off of repeat business. And, the husband gets a truck and then the wife gets an SUV, and, there's 2 vehicles, right?
Yeah. So contrast that. So let's say it's $10,000. We'll be generous with that. $2,500 Ultra Stage 3 package. So if you do a $2,500 and then you never follow out the door, you've left $7,500 just completely on the table, because they may have loved your work. They may have had but they, 2 things can happen. Either they just forget about you and all of a sudden go to somebody else, or they didn't appreciate the fact that you never checked in with them again, and then they go to somebody else. Or it doesn't occur to them on their new vehicle to also get that coated. Because if they're not doing maintenance washes, you can't show them the benefits. You can't get, kind of have that communication and networking and relationship building, right? So, you multiply that times a couple of hundred customers over a decade, dude, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
So
scheduling wise, it's it's not that difficult to fit in a maintenance appointment. If you look at the schedule and you're like, man, this week is full. A lot of the times I'll tell my clients if they're coming in for maintenance work, like, hey, if you just want to bring it at the start of the day, I'll work it in. Even let's say I'm booked out 4 weeks for big jobs. Like, hey, if you can still bring it in the morning, I'll work it in throughout the day. Come pick it up at 5 o'clock. If you're washing a coated vehicle, you have the benefit of it being easier to wash. So
Yeah.
It doesn't take as much time. I personally, I love those services. They fill out your schedule if you need them to. And if your schedule's already full, you can squeeze them in.
And it's tiered down because, like, if you use an example, most of the companies have wheel coatings, glass coatings, interior coatings, right? So even if you have a 9 or 10 year coating on the paint, the wheel coating is only good for a couple of years. The glass coating is good for 12 to 18 months. The interior is good for 6 months. So those are all points of touch. Those are all those calendar-based touch points that during the maintenance wash, and again, if you're using some sort of system like you're able, can't really say any other one because there's not a lot out there that do the complete deal that they do. But in whatever system you're using, you can then bring them in for the maintenance wash and then say, hey, I can tell, we coated the interior 9 months ago, in order to maintain the biocode or, in order to maintain the performance of the interior coat, and we should do that again. So there's your maintenance wash, whatever you charge for that, plus $250 for the interior coating, depending on what your cost is.
Yeah. And I kind of like to let the customer lead that in a way. And this is a different sales approach. But it kind of goes back to, Donald Miller's Business Made Simple. He's got a book and a podcast that he talks about the customer being the hero as like a way to market.
Yep.
And I kind of take that with how I approach that stuff by asking the customer to begin, like when we're setting up the appointment, like, how are things going with the vehicle? Do you have any concerns? How's your interior holding up? How's the wheel coating holding up? Is brake dust sticking more than it used to? And if they kind of bring it up, then I kind of use that to help navigate the sale a bit. But really try and let them, hear their pain points and offer them a solution. But I like it when it starts from that approach rather than just saying, oh, well, time for this. Let's layer.
That's actually a really good point, because that is solution selling, which is rather than you're effectively asking them to identify their pain points, but you're doing it in a subtle, more subtle way, so that then they can say, yeah, I went to, I've noticed it's been a summer. It's later in the summer. We're not having as much rain, and now the brake dust is sticking even when I take a hose to it or whatever. And then that's your opportunity. Or even on the paint, you have to refresh some of these coatings, or pretty much all coatings need to be refreshed and decontaminated so that so that those hydrophilic properties and hydrophobic properties kind of get maintained. So that's a really good point to be able to do that. But it all goes back to having an opportunity to have a conversation with a customer that is free to you. There is no acquisition cost whatsoever, because even if you try to put your $100 an hour time on creating an automated email that goes out 500 times, it's like $1, or a quarter even. It's like it's just the ROI on that stuff is pretty crazy. And then you're driving, so you seem to be really good at the social media stuff. I saw your post yesterday, which is funny. I'd like to hear what you have learned other than just to pay more attention. Explain that story. What happened?
Yeah, so I typically always check my phone with my schedule, with my You're Able app. I'm like, okay, we got this vehicle in and it's getting this, and that. But there's times when because I'm owner-operator, I'm running everything in my mind. I'm like, okay, I remember exactly what this car's getting. It's getting interior coating. It's getting this and that. And for whatever reason, I had this van in, brand new van this week. And for whatever reason in my mind, I'm like, yep, level 3 package. Here we go.
It's black, right?
Black, yeah. And a brand new 2023 Toyota Sienna. And, it's always, to me, I find it comical and just awesome at the same time to like make minivans look incredible.
Yeah.
And it's a nice van too. I mean, these new minivans are pretty nice. But anyways, I did the correction on it, and my level 3 coating is using Crystal Serum Ultra, which, this is a lot of paint.
Yeah, that's a 50 ml bottle, right? So that's not cheap.
And so I do the whole coating, leave for the day, come back the next day after it's cured, and start wrapping up the rest of the job, finish up some interior stuff on it. And I'm texting the customer throughout the job and giving them updates. So I'm getting to the point where I'm about to send them the invoice so he can pay ahead of time. And I'm looking at it, I'm going,
oh no.
Oops. Usually that would be like, oh shoot, I forgot to do something. But no, this guy only booked a level 2 package, which is a 5-year coating. And I just went ahead and gave him the best one because I got
Nice. And you probably did a little extra correction on it. I mean, it was black and all that. So that cost you a little bit of money to learn that experience. I think what I've seen a lot of people do is they have those whiteboard. They'll put a whiteboard, the work order whiteboard in their workspace. But I'm sure it doesn't happen very often, but it could. Like, it's, especially if you're running a shop that has more than one person working, it would be pretty easy for that kind of thing to happen more than one time.
Yeah. And this is the first time I've put a different coating on, I think. Because I'm usually pretty on top of what's getting done on every vehicle, but
right.
It was just a fun laugh. I told the customer, like, hey, you got a nice free upgrade, and he tipped me really well afterwards too, so it's
nice.
It all works out.
Well, and two, you got to use it to build content. You got to use it, and we're talking about it now. Like, it's, you use those challenges to your own advantage, correct?
Yeah, and it seemed like, hey, this would be just kind of a funny, quick little thing to pop on my social media stories just to explain it. And
you even put it on, I noticed you put it on your business page too, right? And did you do it? I didn't watch that version. Did you do a different version for the business page?
When I posted it, I usually post it on my business page, then share it to my personal.
Yeah.
But it was one of those weird things where it was a 1.5-minute video, and Instagram was cutting it to a minute. So I'd posted it, and then I realized it didn't have everything, so I removed it, posted it. Like, eventually I got it right where it was the correct video on both accounts. But yeah, it was just the same video.
Yeah, because even in that, there's a opportunity to make it a joke post, but say, here at High Def Detailing, we go above and beyond for every customer, but we don't always go this above and beyond, right? So again, I think it just goes back to using every one of those as an opportunity. Like, I'm always thinking about content creation. That's just kind of and honestly, I do not do as good a job at all as I should. I honestly have too many brands, but but like, we're going to Moab in a few weeks. We're taking the Jeep, and so I'm shooting content for Rugged Store, for that off-road brand. I'm shooting pictures, shoot some video. I'm taking a buddy of mine makes products for Grand Cherokees. We're taking his stuff with our Grand Cherokee to shoot some stuff. I'm shooting podcasts with Jason Rose while we're there. So it's just looking for opportunities to, create content in an authentic way. And I think you do a really good job of that. I've looked at, I've seen quite a bit of your stuff, and that authenticity part of it, which goes far beyond taking a picture of a friggin' shiny car, right? Like, which no one cares about.
Yeah, I think there was a good post that Chris made. I think it was on the Detailers Roadmap Facebook group recently about, I think it was, I could be wrong, but something about saying just getting in front of your customers and just talking to them in a quick little video or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just goes a long way. And I really took that approach on a lot of stuff, even to my sales pitches. That's kind of how I figured out what content I want to have on my YouTube channel. is I'm like, okay, well, if I can just take what I'm telling a customer 5 minutes on the phone and just put that in a YouTube video, and if it's appropriate when I'm acquiring a new customer, I can just send them that link and be like, hey, here's everything you need to know about our 3 coding packages.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a video, basic video, nothing crazy with edits and fancy lighting of just me talking about our packages. It just makes my sales process smoother on my end.
Yeah, and you use your website a lot for that, right? Like you're driving, so you're kind of the example of the things that I love, which is systems. I'm essentially lazy at heart, and so I want to look for every opportunity to make my life easier. So you've got your Able, which is integrated into your website. How are you using? And I know the website stuff is really. Chris was like, yeah, you should ask him. I know that he's had some really good success in terms of conversion rates and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
with the website itself.
Yeah, I mean the lead generation just, gosh, it not only doubled, it like tripled or quadrupled. Once my website really kind of got everything, when Chris always says, like, when your website's posted, give it a few weeks for SEO stuff to kind of take grab of
Right.
Google to recognize it fully. But yeah, I mean, on my website I had before, which I'd done myself, and it was a good looking website, but like I knew I could do that. I could make something look decent, but I just didn't have the knowledge of back end SEO work and all that. So that's what kind of drove me to get a website with Detailer's Roadmap. But yeah, I mean, just having that SEO background on there has been awesome.
Yeah, people don't really realize how much of a science it is. And honestly, I've been doing web development. My first company was a web development company. And even doing it for so long, things change once a month within Google, and understand the algorithms and all that. So there's a great benefit in having someone that actually knows what they're doing to do that. And now, which side of the fence are you on? Are you showing prices or not showing prices?
So I'm in the happy medium of showing starting prices.
Okay.
I found, for one, my prices change a lot.
Right.
Almost every year I'd go through some revamping, and then midway through the years I'll tweak stuff. So the starting price, I like having that on there. Because, yeah, I mean, it does kind of rule out some of the tire kickers.
Yep.
So I like having that on there. And even in my physical marketing materials, like my brochures, they just show the starting price as well.
Yeah, because the argument, and this is something we've discussed, and I talked to Chris about a lot, which is showing prices of some sort, starting or otherwise, basically sets the tone for the potential customer, right? Like I've had, whenever I was running my shop, people would say, well, how much do you charge? And the answer is not a number. Usually it's, first of all, how much what are you looking to spend was always what I asked. But what that does, that's different than them going to your website, and in their mind, a full detail coding costs $149 because that's what they saw at the car wash next door, quote, coding. And so when they see your number that starts at $549 or whatever your number is, they know this is not the place for me. I'm going to go somewhere else. And so then you don't have to waste time talking to them. And some people believe, and this can be true in some ways, that I can then turn that $149 customer into $540. That's not necessarily true, nor is it necessarily worth the effort.
Right. Or wise.
Right, because they tend to be the worst customers for you. Right. The ones that didn't want to spend it, you talked them into spending it, made promises to do it, which you may deliver, but not necessarily at the level that they have in their mind if they're spending 4 times as much as what they plan to spend.
Right, and then they think that they're doing you a favor because they agreed to help you out by giving you.
Yeah, those are interesting customers. And it goes back to understanding who your customer is. And by putting prices on your site, then that helps you to then steer the right customers into your sales funnel and sales process and steer those that aren't your customer away before you waste their time and they waste your time, right? Like that's the important thing on both ends. So any advice for like new guys kind of just starting first year, kind of doing it as a side hustle now, and looking to go full time? What kind of, to end this, to kind of wrap this up, what kind of advice would you give those people? Guys or girls, I should say.
Yeah. My approach is different than most. I take my time with a lot of things. So depending, if you're the type of person that likes to dive right in, then dive right in, but don't go against the grain. If, like I said, I took baby steps with my business, and I'm really happy with how that's panned out over the years. There's a completely different approach if you want to just dive in and throw all your eggs into the basket and just walk out the door of your current job and just say, I'm going to go all in. That could work for some.
You better have some savings in your savings account, like if you're going to do that, for sure.
But yeah, from like just a security standpoint, take it one step out of a time. And then from a practical standpoint, there's just so many resources out there now. Like the barrier to entry to starting a detailing business is pretty low.
Yep.
It's one of the cool things about the industry. But there's tons of ways to get trained. There's tons of mentors available. And yeah, just take advantage of them.
Yeah, I think the mentoring ROI is something that is really deserves some time spent on it, because I've hired coaches. I have coaches now that help me with different things. I actually do coaching as well, but it's the ROI on a coach versus how long it would take you to do that without them can be, from a time ROI, it might save you 6 months. Which, how much income is that and all that? So I'd seriously recommend people look into that.
Yeah.
Because you're a great example of how that works.
Thank you. And
so then at some point you just, and again, to use you as an example, you're a data guy, so the numbers. We've been preaching knowing your numbers from when I very first launched Detailers Helper and started doing my own business videos. It's like, dude, you have to know your numbers, and most people don't. And if you don't know your numbers, you can't make good decisions.
Yep. And like, I personally still do all the bookkeeping myself. I finally hired an accountant last year to do taxes for me,
which will save you a crap ton of money, by the way. I recommend hiring a CPA.
Yep. And he helped coach me through a lot in QuickBooks, because I told him right up front, like, hey, like I want to do all the bookkeeping. I'll pay you for your time if you can help me just clean up my books a bit and then set me on the right path going forward. And my wife was like, why don't you just you need a bookkeeper to do all your stuff, or let me do it. And I was like, no, I really like this part of the business. I love seeing the numbers. I love seeing my profit and loss every month.
Well, and having your eyes on those things, it allows you to have that in the forefront of your mind, right?
Yep. And it's like right now when I'm thinking about scaling, and I'm already thinking 3 years down the road and taking financial steps for that, like right now, you have to know what's going on, and you have to have that data to compare to previous years. And
That's great. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time. I think you're a great example of what a small operator, owner operator can look like. And, I think that you have made some in my mind, the biggest advantage for what you're doing is that you're very deliberate about how you're building a life around your business, not the other way around. I think that's a really admirable thing. And I think people should emulate that. No matter what business they're in, detailing or otherwise. I think people will just be happier long term if they take that approach versus let's just work our asses off, 17 hours a day every day and for the rest of my life. And so I think that's really cool. And I really appreciate your time, taking this time and all that. So how do people find you? How do people follow you?
Yeah. Highdefdetailing.com is the website. And check it out, because the Detailers Roadmap people did a slam dunk on it.
Yeah, it's awesome. I looked at it.
Yeah. And so I'm High Def Detailing on Instagram, on Facebook. And I think at the very beginning of this recording, you like read the entire name on Facebook. And it's funny because I just changed that like a couple of weeks ago, just to add in the ceramic coating and paint protection.
Yeah, there's SEO right in front of my face. High Def Detailing, ceramic coating, and paint protection. Right, there's some SEO benefit because that is a public page on Facebook.
Yep. So yeah, you can find me there. I do have a YouTube channel that I have invested some time in. It's actually exciting because it's grown, and I have over 1,000 subscribers, and
great.
Trying to put out more content. It's always that mixture of putting out just quick content, and then I've actually hired a couple videographers over the years to do a couple more professional looking ones. But I enjoy keeping that channel active as well too. So there should be some new stuff coming out on there.
Yeah, thank God for YouTube Shorts, right? And Reels and, all of that. So, because then you can shoot a 30-second, 90-second video and throw it up there instead of having to spend the amount of time that it takes to keep those videos going and edited and shot. Well, awesome, guys. I would definitely check out what Ben has going on, and I'm sure that you can reach out to him if you guys want some advice and life advice and family and all of that stuff. And he hasn't quite gotten it completely figured out yet because he's just getting started on this kid thing. But hey, my kids are 24 and 25. I still don't have it figured out. So, but yeah, guys, I appreciate it. All right, Ben, have a great day, buddy.
All right. Thanks. You too, Kevin.
Yeah. See ya. Head over to detailersroadmap.com and get your one-stop success solution today.